The Galactic Empire was a power like no other. Spanning across hundreds of star systems, it controlled everything in its path. Their ships were faster than light, their weapons more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. For centuries, they had crushed all who dared to challenge them. There was no force in the galaxy that could stand against them. But far from the reach of the Empire, deep in the uncharted regions of space, a new power was quietly growing. The humans, a species from a small blue planet called Earth, had spread across the stars. Their colonies were small at first, unnoticed by the mighty Empire. But as time passed, the humans began to grow in number and in strength. They adapted, they learned, and they built. And they waited. They knew that one day, the Empire would come for them. It was on a quiet, forgotten world that the first human contact with the Empire occurred. The planet was located in a remote part of the galaxy, far from any trade routes or major military installations. To the Empire, it was nothing more than a dot on a map. They had no reason to suspect anything of importance was there, but the humans had been watching the Empire for years. They had learned its ways, understood its weaknesses, and built their forces in secret. The Empire, meanwhile, was focused on its usual conquest. It had just finished wiping out a group of rebellious species and was looking for new worlds to bring under its control. The Empire's sensors, far-reaching and powerful, had picked up faint signals from the human colonies, but they had been ignored, dismissed as the remnants of an insignificant species. The Empire believed that no one could stand against them. That all changed with a single message. It came through the Empire's vast communication network, transmitted directly to their military headquarters. At first, the Empire's officers thought it was a joke. The message was simple, brief, and direct. "We warned you to run." The words were chilling, but what made them even stranger was that they were coming from an unknown species. The Galactic Empire had never encountered anything like this before. How could a species that hadn't even been noticed by the Empire be so bold? At first, the Empire dismissed the message. It seemed like a prank, or perhaps a threat from a rival empire trying to shake the Empire's confidence. But the transmission was hard to ignore. It repeated itself over and over, a constant reminder that something new was out there. Something had dared to speak to the Empire. The Empire's leaders gathered in their war room, their most brilliant minds discussing the message. Some believed it was a trap. Others thought it was an attempt to frighten them. But one thing became clear. The humans, whoever they were serious. The warning was not a joke. The High Command decided to send a small fleet to investigate. They didn't think the humans would be a serious threat. After all, the Empire had faced countless species more advanced and dangerous than this one. But the humans' warning stirred something in the hearts of the Empire's officers. Could they really be in danger? The fleet, made up of the Empire's finest warships, set a course for the human colonies. They moved quickly, confident in their overwhelming firepower. Their fleet was unstoppable, they believed, and no one would be able to stand against them. However, the humans had been preparing. For years, they had studied the Empire's movements and tactics. They knew the strengths and weaknesses of the Empire's fleet. The humans had quietly built their own defenses, and they were ready. The Empire would soon learn just how wrong they were. The first fleet of the Empire arrived in the human-controlled sector. The planets they had come to conquer were quiet, almost eerily still. At first, the Empire thought they had arrived too late, that the humans had already fled. But they were wrong. The humans had simply been waiting for them. When the Empire's ships entered the human system, they encountered something unexpected. The humans, with their primitive technology, had created defenses that the Empire had never seen before. Hidden mines in the asteroid fields, automated weapons platforms, and strange electromagnetic pulses disabled the Empire's sensors, throwing their fleet into disarray. The first attack was quick, fierce, and unexpected. The Empire's warships, though powerful, were not prepared for the humans' tactics. The Empire's fleet took heavy damage, and several ships were destroyed before the Empire even knew what hit them. It was a humiliating blow. In the midst of the battle, the humans sent another transmission. "We warned you." The Empire was stunned. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. The humans were not as weak as they had thought. They fought with a strength and determination the Empire had never seen before. And this was just the beginning. The Galactic Empire had made a grave mistake. They had ignored the warning. And now, they would find out just what kind of enemy the humans truly were. After the unexpected defeat in the human system, the Galactic Empire was in a state of shock. Its military leaders gathered in a high-security conference room, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The human colonies, which they had once dismissed as insignificant, had delivered a crushing blow. Their fleet had barely been able to retreat, and the Empire's warships, designed to destroy entire planets, had been damaged. The Empire's pride, its strength, had been shattered. The most surprising part of the attack was not the destruction of their ships, but the message that followed. The same chilling transmission, which had first warned them to run, had been broadcasted again. And again, it echoed across the Empire's communication channels, growing louder and more impossible to ignore with each passing hour. "We warned you to run." It was a simple phrase, but its impact was anything but simple. It was a declaration, a challenge, and a reminder that the Empire had made a grave mistake. The warning made it clear that the humans were not afraid of the Empire. In fact, they seemed ready for war. The Imperial High Command was divided. Some of the officers wanted to dismiss the transmission as a mere psychological tactic, an attempt to break their morale. After all, who could possibly threaten the might of the Galactic Empire? They had conquered countless worlds, crushed rebellions, and destroyed entire species. The idea that a small group of humans could stand against them seemed ridiculous. Yet, deep down, they knew something had changed. The humans had delivered a message, and it was a message that could not be ignored. Admiral Kor, one of the Empire's most respected military leaders, stood in the center of the room. His reputation was built on his ability to crush enemies with precision and strategy. But even he could not dismiss the seriousness of the situation. "They are not like the other species we faced," Admiral Kor said, his voice calm but filled with concern. "The humans, they know something we don't. We cannot underestimate them." His words were met with silence. It was not easy for the Empire's leadership to admit that they had been wrong. The thought that a species they had never even considered a threat could now challenge their dominance was unthinkable. But the evidence was clear. The humans had outsmarted them. They had struck when the Empire least expected it, and they had done it with a kind of precision that even the Empire's greatest commanders could not ignore. The Empire's leaders debated their next steps. Some urged retaliation, sending more fleets to crush the human colonies. Others suggested waiting, gathering intelligence, and studying the humans' tactics further. But the one thing they all agreed on was that the humans were no longer to be ignored. Meanwhile, on the human side, the message was being celebrated. Across the human colonies, the broadcast had become a symbol of defiance. It was a reminder that humanity was not as weak as the Empire thought. It was a call to arms, a rallying cry that united people across the stars. The warning had done its job. It had shaken the Empire and brought the humans together. Commander Sarah Blake, one of the leaders of the human military forces, stood in the command center of their largest fleet. She was a brilliant strategist, known for her quick thinking and calm under pressure. As she watched the Empire's ships retreat, she knew this was only the beginning. "We've made them doubt themselves," Commander Blake said, her eyes focused on the holographic map of the galaxy. "They will come again. But next time, we'll be ready." The humans knew they were outnumbered and outgunned. The Empire had technology that was far more advanced than anything humanity had ever developed. But the humans had something that the Empire did not: a determination to survive, a unity that could not be broken, and a fierce will to protect their way of life. They had been underestimated, but now the Empire knew better. The warning was not just a message, it was a promise. The humans had shown the Empire that they were capable of fighting back. They had demonstrated their power, their creativity, and their ability to adapt. But there was still much to be done. The war had only just begun. Back in the Empire's war room, the debate continued. But there was one thing that no one could deny. The humans had made their mark. They had struck the first blow, and they had done so in a way that made it impossible for the Empire to ignore them any longer. The Galactic Empire had once been the undisputed ruler of the galaxy. Now they had to face the reality that they were not the only power out there. There was a new force in the galaxy, a force that had warned them to run, and a force that was willing to fight to the end. The Empire had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity, and now they would have to face the consequences of that mistake. The warning had been given, and it was clear. The humans were ready for war. The Imperial fleet had retreated, but the damage was done. The humans had proven that they were not the weak species the Empire had thought them to be. The warning had been clear, and now the Galactic Empire knew that it had to take action. The only question was how. The humans were unpredictable, and their methods were unlike anything the Empire had faced before. But the Empire had never been one to back down from a challenge. Admiral Kor, who had witnessed the retreat firsthand, stood before a group of his top officers. His mind was racing. The loss had been a blow to their pride, but it also revealed something else. The humans were clever, resourceful, and relentless. The Empire needed a new plan. "We cannot afford to make the same mistake again," Admiral Kor said, his voice firm. "We will strike hard and fast, before they can prepare any further. We will show them that no one can defy the might of the Empire." The room was silent. The officers nodded in agreement. They were all too aware of the risks, but the alternative, allowing the humans to continue their rise, was unthinkable. The Empire had crushed entire civilizations before, and they would do the same with the humans. The Empire's response was swift. A massive fleet, led by Admiral Kor himself, was dispatched to the human colonies. This time, they would not underestimate the humans. This time, they would destroy the threat once and for all. The humans, however, had not been idle. The warning had been a wake-up call, and they had used the time since to prepare. Commander Sarah Blake and her fellow leaders had anticipated the Empire's next move. They knew the Empire would strike again, and they were ready. In the heart of their largest colony, Sarah stood before a holographic map of their defenses. The human forces were small compared to the Empire, but they had learned to use their resources wisely. Their ships, though not as advanced, were equipped with weapons designed specifically to counter the Empire's overwhelming firepower. "We know they're coming," Sarah said, her eyes scanning the map. "But we have the advantage of knowing their tactics. They're going to hit us hard, but they won't expect what's waiting for them." She turned to her officers. "We'll divide our forces into smaller groups, spread out across the system. We'll use the asteroid fields and debris to our advantage. They won't be able to track us easily." The plan was risky, but it was their best chance. The Empire's sensors were powerful, but they weren't perfect. The humans knew how to hide, how to strike when the Empire least expected it. As the Imperial fleet entered the human system, they were met with a deadly silence. The Empire's ships, massive and imposing, cut through the darkness of space, their engines leaving trails of light behind them. The fleet moved in formation, prepared for battle, but they found nothing. No sign of the humans, no resistance. Admiral Kor's eyes narrowed. "Where are they?" he muttered to himself. "They're here somewhere." He had expected the humans to put up a fight, but this was different. The human ships, though smaller, were agile. The Empire's sensors couldn't lock onto them. It was as though the humans had vanished. The first strike came from the shadows. A series of hidden mines, placed carefully by the humans, detonated at once, tearing through the lead ships in the Imperial fleet. The explosion sent shockwaves through the system, causing the Imperial ships to stagger and lose their formations. "Return fire," Admiral Kor shouted. "Find them. Destroy them." But it was already too late. The humans, using their superior knowledge of the terrain, had already moved. They struck from behind asteroids, from within the debris fields, using the Empire's own tactics against them. The Empire's ships, too large and slow to maneuver effectively in the chaos, were easy targets. The humans hit them where it hurt most, at their engines and their communication systems. The battle raged on, and the Empire found itself in disarray. The once mighty fleet, which had crushed countless civilizations, was now struggling against an enemy it had never expected. The humans fought with precision and cunning, never allowing the Empire to get a full grip on the situation. Admiral Kor gritted his teeth in frustration. "They're everywhere," he growled. "How are they doing this?" But it wasn't just the Empire's technology that was failing. It was their mindset. They had never encountered an enemy that could think this way. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something more. They were fighting for their homes, their families, their future. And they were winning. After hours of battle, the Imperial fleet had taken heavy damage. Ships limped back to the safety of their command ships, while the humans continued to strike with surgical precision. The Empire had never been so unprepared, and for the first time in years, they were forced to retreat. As the last Imperial ship retreated, Sarah Blake stood in front of her team, a rare smile crossing her face. "They thought we were weak," she said, her voice calm but filled with pride. "But now they know. We warned them." The humans had struck the first true blow in the war. They had shown the Empire that they were not to be underestimated. And now, the Empire knew that this war would not be as easy as they had thought. The news of the Empire's retreat spread like wildfire across the human colonies. For the first time, the humans had shown that they could fight back. They had dealt a significant blow to the Empire, a force that had once seemed invincible. The victory, however, was just the beginning. The war was far from over, and the humans knew they couldn't rest on their laurels. The Empire would be back, and when they returned, they would come with even greater strength. Commander Sarah Blake stood in the command center of the largest human fleet, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The battle had been hard, and many ships had been lost, but the humans had achieved what seemed impossible. They had forced the Empire to retreat. It was a victory, yes, but it was also a warning. The humans couldn't afford to become overconfident. They had to be ready for what was coming. "Admiral Kor will come back," Sarah said, her voice steady but full of determination. "And when he does, he will bring everything the Empire has." Her officers nodded in agreement. They were all battle-hardened and knew that the Empire would never stop. It had taken centuries for the Empire to build its power, and they wouldn't simply give up after one defeat. The humans had to be ready for the next phase of the war. "We can't just wait for them to come to us," Sarah continued. "We need to hit them first. We need to disrupt their supply lines, sabotage their command centers, and strike at their weak points." The humans had learned much in the short time since the first encounter. They had studied the Empire's movements, its tactics, and its technology. They had even captured a few of the Empire's ships during the battle, giving them valuable intelligence about the Empire's strengths and weaknesses. Sarah's plan was simple but effective. The humans would divide into smaller groups and infiltrate the Empire's controlled systems. They would sabotage supply routes, disable communication networks, and gather information to undermine the Empire's war efforts. It was a risky strategy, but it was the only one that had a chance of success. Across the colonies, the call to arms was answered. People from all walks of life volunteered to fight. Scientists, engineers, pilots, and soldiers all joined the resistance, bringing their skills and knowledge to the cause. The human spirit, once underestimated, was now their greatest weapon. Everyone, from the youngest recruit to the oldest veteran, had a role to play in the fight for their survival. Sarah knew that the road ahead would be difficult. The Empire was not only powerful, but it also had the resources and technology to crush the human resistance if they were not careful. But there was one thing the Empire didn't have: unity. The humans were not just fighting for their freedom, they were fighting for each other. The bonds between them were strong, and they would not be easily broken. As the first wave of human fighters left the safety of their colonies to carry out the plan, Sarah looked to the stars. The Empire had underestimated them once. They would not make that mistake again. The humans' efforts were not just limited to space battles. On the ground, resistance movements were growing stronger. Local militias were formed, and civilians turned into soldiers. The humans had learned the art of guerrilla warfare, using their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. They set traps, ambushed Imperial patrols, and sabotaged the Empire's infrastructure. Every attack, no matter how small, weakened the Empire's hold on the galaxy. But it wasn't just the humans' military efforts that made a difference. The resistance also focused on spreading the truth about the Empire's tyranny. They broadcasted their victories, their struggles, and their message of hope across the galaxy. The human story became a beacon of resistance, inspiring other oppressed species to join the fight. It was no longer just about humanity. It was about the entire galaxy rising up against the Empire's cruelty. One of the most significant victories came when a small team of resistance fighters managed to infiltrate an Imperial command center. Their mission was to steal vital intelligence about the Empire's next move. The mission was risky, but the team succeeded, obtaining information that would give the humans a critical advantage in the coming battles. The success of this operation became a symbol of what the humans were capable of. It was a turning point that showed the Empire they were not dealing with an ordinary species. Back on Earth, Sarah received the report of the mission's success. She couldn't help but smile. It was a small victory in the grand scheme of the war, but it was one that brought hope to the human resistance. Every victory, no matter how small, was a step toward their ultimate goal: freedom from the Empire's rule. The Empire, meanwhile, was not blind to the growing human resistance. They had underestimated the humans before, and they would not make that mistake again. Imperial commanders, once dismissive of the human threat, were now scrambling to regroup. They had lost ground, but they were not ready to give up. The war had just begun, and both sides knew that the coming battles would be even more intense. As Sarah looked out over the stars once more, she knew the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. But she also knew one thing for certain: the humans would not back down. They would resist, they would fight, and they would not rest until the Empire was defeated. The war between the Galactic Empire and the humans had entered a new, more dangerous phase. For every victory the humans claimed, the Empire responded with overwhelming force. The humans, though determined, were feeling the weight of the constant battle. They knew the Empire would never stop until they had crushed the resistance, but they also knew they could not back down. Not now. Commander Sarah Blake sat in the command center, studying the latest intelligence reports. The Empire had launched a series of counterattacks against the human colonies, striking with brutal efficiency. Entire settlements had been destroyed, and many resistance fighters had lost their lives. The Empire's tactics were changing. They had learned from their mistakes and were now focusing on cutting off human supply lines and weakening their military positions. "We knew they would come back harder," Sarah said to her officers, her voice steady but tinged with concern. "But we can't let them take the fight to us. We have to hit them before they get too comfortable." The resistance was spread thin, with forces scattered across several colonies. Some were fighting back in space, while others were engaged in guerrilla tactics on the ground. But the Empire's forces were larger, better equipped, and more disciplined. The humans had to be clever, using their knowledge of the terrain and their ability to adapt to stay one step ahead. "We need to hit them at their core," Sarah continued, pointing to a holographic map of the galaxy. "Their command centers, their factories, their key military outposts. If we can disrupt their supply chains, we can slow them down long enough to give us a chance." Her plan was risky. The Empire had built its power over centuries, and its key installations were well defended. But Sarah had no other choice. The humans had to go on the offensive. They had to take the fight to the heart of the Empire. Across the galaxy, small groups of resistance fighters prepared for the next stage of the war. Some would infiltrate Imperial-controlled planets, while others would launch surprise attacks on Imperial fleets. It was a game of cat and mouse, and the humans were playing with fire. The first of these strikes came on a remote Imperial outpost, located on a barren moon in a forgotten system. The humans, using stolen Imperial technology, managed to slip past the Empire's defenses and land on the surface undetected. Their mission was simple: destroy the outpost's main power source and cripple its ability to communicate with the rest of the fleet. The attack was swift. The human fighters, armed with advanced explosives, moved through the outpost like shadows, planting charges and disabling the power grids. Within minutes, the outpost was in chaos. The Empire's soldiers scrambled to defend it, but they were too late. The humans had already done their damage. The power source exploded, cutting off the outpost's communication with the Empire. The strike was a success, but it came at a cost. Several fighters were lost in the explosion, and the human team barely escaped before the Empire's reinforcements arrived. Back on their homeworlds, the humans celebrated their success, but the victory felt bittersweet. The Empire would come for them, and when they did, it would be with greater force. The fight was far from over, but the humans had proven that they could strike back, that they could hurt the Empire, and that they were not afraid to take risks. Meanwhile, the Empire was not idle. Admiral Kor, furious at the loss of the outpost, ordered a full-scale retaliation. The Empire's war machine was vast, and it had the resources to crush the humans once and for all. But the Admiral also knew that they had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt. They were not like the other species the Empire had conquered. The humans were unpredictable. Prepare for a final assault, Admiral Kor ordered, his voice cold and calculating. We will make sure this resistance is wiped out. The Empire's fleet, larger than ever before, set its course for the human colonies. This time, they would not be caught off guard. They would not make the same mistake again. The Empire would use its full power to crush the human resistance once and for all. But Sarah and her team knew that the Empire was coming. They had expected this. The humans would have to fight for every inch of space, every planet, and every colony. The resistance was spread out, but they had one thing the Empire didn't. They had the will to survive, and that made all the difference. As the Empire's ships approached the human colonies, Sarah stood in front of her officers, determination written on her face. "We've come this far," she said. "We can't stop now. The Empire thinks they can crush us, but they don't understand what we're fighting for. We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for our future. We're fighting for freedom." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and on the brink of destruction. But they were not alone. They had each other, and that was all they needed to keep fighting. With that, Sarah turned toward the command center, ready to lead her people into the next phase of the war. The Empire was coming, but the humans were ready. They had been warned once, and now they would give the Empire a fight it would never forget. The war had reached a boiling point. After several key victories, the humans had shown that they were capable of pushing back against the Empire's vast might. The Empire, humiliated by their losses, was now determined to end the rebellion once and for all. This time, they would not just attack. They would strike with everything they had. Admiral Kor sat in the command center of his flagship, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The Empire's fleet was massive, with more ships than the humans could possibly defeat. They were prepared for a full-scale assault on the human colonies. The humans had shown courage, but that wouldn't be enough to stop the Empire's overwhelming force. "The time for small strikes is over," Admiral Kor said coldly to his officers. "We will bring the full power of the Empire to bear. We will destroy their fleets, their colonies, and their hope. The Empire's forces had already begun to move, gathering in space around the human colonies. The plan was simple: invade, crush the resistance, and then burn the colonies to the ground as a warning to any who dared defy the Empire. Back on Earth, Commander Sarah Blake was well aware of the approaching storm. The Resistance had done everything it could to weaken the Empire's supply lines, but the Empire's forces were growing stronger with every passing day. The battle ahead would be their hardest yet. Sarah had gathered her officers for one last meeting before the storm hit. "We've prepared as much as we can," Sarah said, her voice firm, but weary. "The Empire is coming, and we need to be ready. This won't be easy. They'll be relentless, but we have something they don't: the will to fight. We fight not just for our survival, but for the future of everyone who calls this galaxy home." The Resistance had no illusions about the odds. The Empire was a giant, and they were but a small group of rebels. But they also knew that if they could weaken the Empire just enough, if they could buy time, other oppressed species might join the fight. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for a galaxy free from tyranny. The first signs of the Empire's attack came when their fleet entered the outer rim of human-controlled space. Sarah and her team watched the massive ships appear on their screens. It was as if a dark cloud had descended upon them. The Empire was here, and this would be the largest battle they had ever faced. "Everyone into position," Sarah ordered. "We can't let them take the initiative. We strike first." The humans launched their counterattack, hitting the Empire's flanks with all the firepower they could muster. Small, fast ships darted through the debris fields, launching surprise assaults on Imperial cruisers. They fired their weapons with precision, targeting weak points in the Empire's massive ships. For a moment, it seemed like the Empire might falter. But the Empire was quick to retaliate. The first wave of human fighters was quickly overwhelmed by the sheer size of the Imperial fleet. One by one, their ships were destroyed, and the humans were forced to pull back. But Sarah knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. "We've got them right where we want them," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding outside. "Now we make them chase us." The humans knew that they couldn't win this fight head-on, but they could use their agility, their speed, and their knowledge of the terrain to make the Empire bleed. They pulled their ships back into the asteroid fields, using the debris for cover. The Empire's fleet, larger and slower, found itself at a disadvantage. The human ships darted in and out of the shadows, striking quickly before disappearing into the darkness. But the Empire had learned from their previous mistakes. Admiral Kor was not a fool. He ordered his fleet to spread out and advance in a tighter formation, making it harder for the humans to slip past them. "We will crush them," Kor muttered, his eyes fixed on the screen as the battle raged on. No more games. The Empire's full fleet had arrived, and with it came a new level of destruction. Imperial dreadnoughts unleashed devastating volleys of firepower, shattering the human lines. But the humans refused to give up. They fought with everything they had, knowing that if they didn't, the Empire would wipe them out completely. In one of the fiercest battles of the war, Sarah's fleet found itself in a desperate struggle for survival. A massive Imperial battleship loomed over them, its weapons firing relentlessly. Sarah's ship was damaged, and the crew fought to keep the ship operational. "Hold steady," Sarah shouted as the ship shook under the impact of enemy fire. "We're not backing down." Despite the overwhelming odds, Sarah's resolve never wavered. She knew that this fight was more than just about winning. It was about sending a message to the Empire. Humanity would never be broken. As the battle raged on, the Resistance fighters fought with everything they had, but it was clear that the Empire's wrath was unstoppable. The humans were losing ground. But even in the face of certain defeat, they did not stop fighting. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were not out of spirit. On the ground, Resistance fighters continued to fight the Empire's occupation forces, using guerrilla tactics to sabotage supply lines, destroy communication towers, and hit Imperial patrols where it hurt. It was small-scale resistance, but it mattered. Every successful strike weakened the Empire's hold. Despite the Empire's might, there was one thing they could never understand: the fire that burned in the hearts of the human resistance. The Empire could destroy ships, cities, and colonies, but it could never destroy the spirit of the humans fighting to protect their future. The human resistance was on the brink. The battle with the Empire had raged for months, and despite their best efforts, the Empire's relentless forces seemed unstoppable. Entire colonies had been wiped out, and many brave fighters had fallen. But Commander Sarah Blake refused to give up. She knew that the final confrontation was nearing, and it would either be their victory or their end. Sarah stood in the command center, looking at the holomap of the galaxy. The Empire's fleet was advancing, its warships looming over the remaining human strongholds. The resistance had managed to survive, but at a great cost. Now, only a handful of colonies remained free, and those were all under constant threat of destruction. "They think they can crush us," Sarah said, her voice low but filled with determination. "But we're still here, and as long as we're breathing, we fight." Her officers nodded. They had seen the worst of the Empire's wrath, but they had also seen the incredible power of unity. The humans had fought back time and time again, never letting the Empire crush their spirit. And now, they were preparing for one final battle that could decide the fate of the galaxy. "Admiral Kor is coming for us," Sarah continued. "He's bringing everything he has. This is it. We either stop him here, or we lose everything." The room was silent. The weight of her words hung in the air. There was no turning back. They had one chance to end this war. Across the galaxy, the final preparations were being made. The remaining human fleets assembled for what would be their most dangerous mission yet. The plan was risky, but it was the only one that had a chance of success. They would draw the Empire into a trap, a final stand on a remote planet that would give the humans the advantage. The planet, a barren world located in the outer rim, was far from any major Empire-controlled systems. It was the perfect place for an ambush. The humans would use the terrain to their advantage, luring the Empire into the heart of the planet's treacherous canyons, where the Empire's ships would have a difficult time maneuvering. Sarah's team had spent weeks planning the operation. They had already placed explosives in key locations on the planet, ready to destroy the Empire's fleet if they could draw them close enough. It was a last-ditch effort, but it was their only hope. "We don't have the luxury of time," Sarah said, staring at the stars on the holomap. "This is the moment we've been preparing for. The Empire won't stop until they've wiped us out, so we're going to hit them hard and fast." As the final countdown began, Sarah and her team took their positions. The human fleets moved into position around the planet, ready to engage the Empire's forces. The planet's surface was desolate, its deep canyons and craggy terrain offering perfect cover for the Resistance's ambush. The first signs of the Empire's fleet came through the comms. Massive warships, dozens of them, led by Admiral Kor's flagship. The Empire had come in full force, determined to end this rebellion once and for all. Sarah watched as the Empire's ships entered the system, their enormous forms slowly coming into view. The time had come. She gave the order to move. "We draw them in," she said, her voice steady. "Then we hit them with everything we've got." The humans fired the first shots, their smaller, faster ships darting from the shadows and launching surprise attacks on the Empire's outer flanks. The Empire responded with overwhelming firepower, but the humans had already begun their retreat, drawing the Empire deeper into the planet's canyons. As the Empire followed, the trap was set. The planet's surface exploded in a hail of fire as the humans detonated their explosives, catching the Empire off guard. Several Imperial ships were crippled in the initial wave, and the humans launched their final assault, using the confusion to their advantage. But the Empire was not done yet. Admiral Kor, furious at the loss of his fleet, ordered a full assault. The Empire's remaining ships surged forward. and the battle intensified. The humans fought bravely, using everything they had. Every ship, every weapon, and every last drop of their energy. They fought with the knowledge that this might be their last chance. In the heart of the battle, Sarah's ship took heavy damage. Her crew scrambled to keep it functional as the Empire's dreadnoughts bore down on them. But Sarah remained calm, her focus sharp. She knew that this was the moment they had all been waiting for. "We're not giving up," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This is our fight, and we'll win it." As the battle reached its peak, something unexpected happened. The remaining human fighters, outnumbered and outgunned, began to rally. They fought harder, faster, more determined than ever before. It was as if the Empire's overwhelming force had awakened something in them. The fire that had burned in the hearts of the resistance now blazed brighter than ever. And then, against all odds, the Empire began to retreat. The human fleets, battered and bruised, had dealt such a devastating blow that the Empire's forces were forced to fall back. The humans had won. They had stopped the Empire's invasion, and they had done it together. As the smoke cleared, Sarah stood on the bridge of her ship, looking out at the remains of the Empire's fleet. They had done it. They had won. "The Empire's wrath has ended," she said quietly, her voice filled with both relief and pride. "And humanity is free."